I want to talk Blue Jays because, hey, tonight's the night. If they win their game against the LA Dodgers, they win the World Series. First time since 1993. Stu Cowan, who we talk to more often than not about hockey, but it turns out is a big baseball fan as well, and is on with us. Stu, first of all, thank you for coming on. I want to start with this Wall Street Journal article that kind of came out of nowhere. I've never seen sort of anybody talk about this before as the reason for the Blue Jays turnaround. The author of the story basically says it's got nothing to do with, the on-field stuff or signing Vladimir Guerrero to that giant contract. It had to do, in fact, according to his analysis here, with corporate restructuring that they implemented back in 2018 in terms of, who reports to ownership, and that's the reason for their success. You've seen the article. What do you think about this idea?
Well, it's surprising that it took Edward Rogers so long to put more of a focus on sports. I mean, it's big money. I mean, you look right here with the Canadians. Jeff Molson paid $575 million for the team, and now it's worth $3 billion. So he's taken more of a hands-on approach and increased their salary payroll also, which was mentioned in the story. They've gone from 14th up to, I believe it's 5th now in MLB payroll. And, MLB, there's no hard salary cap. You can spend as much as you want on players as long as you're willing to pay the penalty. And the rich teams are willing to do that, which makes it hard on the other teams. So for the Blue Jays, they're in a good position now. They've signed Vladimir Guerrero for $500 million moving forward over 10 years. And the value of that franchise, I'm sure, will just keep going up.
I wanted to get back to the article, right? It says here that for almost two decades, the Blue Jays operated differently from the rest of Major League Baseball. As soon as I read that, I thought, wow, it's like we're reading about the Expos when they had 22 million owners all sharing, their decisions on who should go forward. That changed about 5 or 6 years ago, and since that time, things have gone better. Now they're pretty much reporting the way everybody else does. And it's funny because when you mention payrolls, what does everyone say? The LA Dodgers have the highest payroll in baseball. Therefore, with guys like Ohtani, they're going to win every year. Did the Blue Jays come to the realization that you have to spend money to win?
I think they certainly did, and we see it in baseball. And it looks like they've spent that money very wisely on Vladimir Guerrero with the way he's been playing during this postseason. And I don't know if you watched that documentary on the Expos on Netflix, and Who Killed the Montreal Expos. And one of the things MLB insisted, they only wanted one owner to report to MLB, and that owner was Claude Brochu, which is why he took most of the heat. But now it seems in the Blue Jays where they were sort of, I don't want to say an afterthought in the Rogers business, but they were just sort of part of it, and now they've moved that up. And as the story said, it's now they consider it the third pillar in their business, behind cable and wireless. And the other thing, I'm sure there'll be record viewers tonight for this game. And pro sports is the only sort of thing that people watch live now, which is why the NFL makes so much money and why they can charge so much for advertising. It's something that, you want to watch sports live. It's going to be different if you tape the Blue Jays game and watch it tomorrow, right? Knowing who already won. So you're watching it tonight. So it's a huge business for Rogers. And as I said, I'm sort of surprised it took them this long to get to this point.
Yeah, you talk about what it costs to own content and stuff and how much teams are worth. And, you think back in the day in watching that Netflix documentary, for people who haven't seen it, it's actually, first of all, did you enjoy it? Did you think it was really good?
I did. I mean, I grew up, I was 6 years old when the Expos came to town, and Rusty Staub was my first sports hero. So it was sad watching. It brought back a lot of good memories and bittersweet memories. And at the end of the day, I think, the reason the Expos left is basically because Montreal couldn't afford to keep a major league team as the salaries kept going up. Charles Bronfman realized how much the salaries are going up and didn't want to keep paying them. And there just wasn't that one really rich billionaire willing to step forward and buy the team, realizing they might lose money some years to keep the team in Montreal. And you look in Toronto with the money that Rogers has behind them. There's no worry about the Blue Jays leaving town.
It's interesting though. You talk about that one rich Montrealer, whoever that would have been. It's strange now when you look back and think it took 15 different corporate guys to get together. Mm-hmm. Oh, we'll put in $1 million. You put in $1 million. We should be okay. And of course, it was the worst decision they could have possibly made. It's interesting, too, that no one had the foresight back then. And I realized things were different, in the 1990s than they are now in pro sport, in baseball specifically. But the franchise here, had it still been going and assumed they would have been competitive, and maybe that's a big assumption, probably be worth, 5 times, 10 times what it was worth back then anyway.
Oh, without a doubt. And if they had taken a risk after that 94 strike and re-signed their key players instead of letting them all go, maybe it would have been a different story. Maybe we would have had the ballpark. Maybe they would have won a World Series. But Claude Brochu at that point just couldn't afford to take that financial risk, or the other owners either. And that's what happened with the Expos, and that led to their demise. Just they couldn't keep their best players.
I will point out, by the way, you mentioned Vladimir Guerrero and that contract, the rich contract. I remember before the season started, right, there was a question as to whether he would resign, right? Remember, he might go somewhere else.
It looked like he was going to leave.
Yeah.
It really did. It looked like he wasn't going to stay. And then I guess Rogers stepped up and said, no, we're going to keep him. And they gave him that huge contract. Just going back like with the Canadians, there was a period, too, you got to remember, when there was no Quebecers or Montrealers who wanted to buy the Canadians, and then George Gillette, the American, stepped in and bought them for, I believe it was like $250 million, if I'm not mistaken, which was what it cost just to build the Bell Center. So he got either the Bell Center or the team for free. And then when Jeff Molson got his group together to buy the Canadians for $575 million, Forbes at the time thought it was a crazy decision. There's no way a hockey team could be worth that much, but they were wrong. It's the same thing we see with baseball. We see, the NHL is going to expand, and when they expand, it looks like the expansion fee is going to be $2 billion for a franchise. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of money to be made in pro sports, and Rogers is realizing that.
I wonder how George Gillette feels today, knowing the franchise is worth that kind of money, what he sold it for, and how much it could have been worth today, or whether he thinks about it at all.
To buy Liverpool soccer team. Remember, that was the reason why he sold it, to make an even bigger investment, and that sort of fell apart for him also. But there's a lot of, I'm sure, rich Quebec, Montreal businessmen kicking themselves that they didn't step in and buy the team when George Gillette did.
So I will just ask you, here we are, Game 6 tonight. Blue Jays going up against arguably the best pitcher in baseball right now for tonight, right? Although you could have said that maybe about Blake Snell a couple of days ago. What are you expecting tonight? You think this ends tonight?
I think it does. I just think the momentum the Blue Jays are riding coming back home. When they lost that 18-inning game, all the talk was, okay, they're done. No team can recover from such an emotional loss. And, boy, they bounced back and won the last two games in L.A. But, pitching is everything. So if the Dodgers pitcher is as good as he's been in his previous starts, it's going to be tough for the Blue Jays. But that home field advantage, they're going to be riding high, the Blue Jays, going into this game. So I think they'll win tonight. But the good part for the Blue Jays, if they don't win tonight, they get another chance tomorrow.
I'll simply say I don't believe they're going to win tonight. First of all, for two reasons. Number one, I don't think there's anything better than a Game 7 in a World Series or a Stanley Cup. And number two, this whole idea of, you just described it now, Stu, of emotion, right? After that 18-inning loss, to me, it's just put on your pants, you go out the next day. It doesn't matter one way or the other, just like I think it won't matter to the Dodgers tonight after having lost, at home. So I'm thinking this goes 7. Just saying.
Well, you'll see. I'm sort of hoping it doesn't, because I'll be covering the Canadians game tomorrow at the Bell Center, so I won't be able to watch a Game 7 if there is one.
How are you planning on getting to the Canadians game tomorrow?
I live on the South Shore, so I think the REM is working.
The REM only works every now and then. You already know that, Stu, don't you? It doesn't work all the time.
Actually, you know what? When it's working, it's amazing.
Okay.
It really is a fantastic thing. So I'll either be driving in or I'll be taking the REM.
I wish you luck. And for everybody else who wasn't paying attention, there is no public transit tomorrow of any kind. Not bus, not metro. It's a strike. So if you're planning on going to the Habs game, you're going to have to get there, I don't know, either if you're lucky enough to be on the South Shore and the REM is working, yeah, you can do that, but otherwise just keep that in mind. So, and that goes, by the way, for the Owls too, right? Yeah. Alouettes game tomorrow, that's an afternoon game.
Yeah.
Where it's hard to get to at the best of times to begin with.
Exactly.
To Molson Stadium, so good luck with that as well. Hey, I appreciate you hopping on with us, Stu. Have yourself a great weekend.
All right, enjoy the games.
Take good care. You too.
Seasoned gamer or just video game curious? This Week in Gaming is the podcast for you. We break down the latest in the world of video games, from basics to beyond. The hottest gaming news, insight, and industry leaders and more weekly. Join me, Naomi Kyle, and stay ahead of the game with all the latest updates, even if you're a total newbie. Stream This Week in Gaming on the free iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.